Hey friends, how's it going? I hope you're having an awesome week and maybe just day, or maybe you're just having an awesome right now because you get to sit down, chillax, and watch a knife video. And hopefully this will impress you a little bit. This is the Parrot from Harnds Knives. I've reviewed a number of Harnds knives and I quite like most of them. What do I think of this one? Well, stick around. We'll go to the tabletop, take a good close look at it, take it apart, share the measurements with you, share my thoughts and ideas about this knife with you guys, and it should hopefully help you decide if you want to buy one or not. Don't forget to leave a comment down below, hit the like or the dislike button. Please interact with this video in some way. It really does help the channel if you interact with it somehow. Thank you. Now let's go to the tabletop. Here's a close look at the two-tone variant of this. Well, there's two two-tone variants. They both have got this yellow swoop in here, and you can either get this sort of royal blue color or you can get it in red. And then, of course, the whole thing is available in just flat black G10 or purple G10. Yeah, you don't see that terribly common. But there you go. There's the knife. It's a little bit big for some people, I guess. I don't know. It's a big Parrot, I guess. I've reviewed two other Parrots in my time. The first Parrot I reviewed was this guy. This is the QSP Parrot. This is one of the few knives that, is in my permanent collection. I tried to sell a lot of my knives, to raise money to pay big bills. This is one of those that didn't get put on that list because, well, for one, it's not a very expensive knife. It's not quite half the cost of this, but pretty close to half the cost of this knife. And it's a very, very usable knife. Version 2 of this knife has ball bearings. This guy's got washers in it, but you get ceramic ball bearings if you buy a V2 version that's out now. It's been out for a little while, a couple of years, a year? I'm not sure. Those are all just G10. This has got a nice red micarta and a D2 steel blade, but look how useful that blade is. It's like a large pen knife, like an extra large pen knife. And it's a very, very usable knife, and I'm very happy with this. The other Penguin I reviewed was by Olight's knife line. This guy's a little bit special. It's quite nice. There's stuff I don't like about this knife, and I'm going to come across that. And there's stuff that I like. What do I like? 14C28 on stainless steel. It's got a satin finish. It's a fairly glossy satin finish. That's neither here nor there in my opinion. Sort of a sheep's foot style blade here. A little bit of a swedge up there just to make it look like it can penetrate better. It's not too drop down, so it's sort of like a cross between a drop point and a clip and a sheep's foot sort of. But it doesn't really have a pointy tip in terms of for, stabby, puncturing kind of thing. That's not the style of blade that this is. But it's fairly thin at the edge, which is quite nice. I'll give you the exact measurements later on. We've got a spine here that sort of curves up. Got some jimping on there, fairly long jimping. I'm happy with this jimping, even if you do this forward grip. Okay, so I might as well talk about that. Huge section here, sort of a forward choil, but not really a forward choil because it's, 80% of that section is just in the handle. It's not really up on the blade. It's just sort of like, a forward grip. Very well done. That's one of the best things about this knife is that forward grip. I'm very happy with it. The edges here of the blade are, chamfered, softened, sort of rounded. It's not sharp at all. And it's close to the G10, which means you get a nice flat area to grip onto. And I'm very, very happy with that. High flat grind. You still got a flat section here that you can clamp onto if you use a guided sharpening system where you clamp the blades down. So that's really good. Keep everything nicely centered. Fairly flat blade. If I put it up against, a ruler, you can see it's got a bit of a belly, but not an awful lot of a belly. So that's quite nice. Very happy with this blade. What is it? Roughly 3.5 inches in the blade length, tiny bit over 3.5 inches. So if you've got a 3.5 limit where you live, this is just a little bit over that, enough over that yeah, you might get yourself into trouble. It's a liner lock. You can't really see in there as well as I had hoped. It's got lockup exactly as much engagement as I prefer a new knife to be, and you can get in there with your thumb easily. Nice cutaway here. Really nice chamfering and jimping. Like, that's kind of unique. You don't see this very often, where they've done both a little chamfer on the side where your thumb pushes and that kind of jimping. You know, they've gone a little bit above and beyond, which very, very happy with that. So lockup's good. No blade play side to side, up and down, really, really nicely done. And yet, very smooth action. It wants to close, and detent is very well done. Opens very, very well. Quite happy with that indeed. Now let's talk more about the things I do like. 3D contour G10, you know, so it's a little bit thicker in the middle. You know, a little bit of milling done up here. If you're going to do a pinch grip, that helps up there. I like that, and it's a nice little touch. We've got, I think it's aluminum pivot collar there, and we've got their H logo on this side. Probably not a spinning pivot pin, but we'll prove that later on because I'll take it apart on camera. Well done. Up here, they've even got a little bit of a relief cut in here for your thumb to sit in if you're gripping it back here. So jimping up there, and extra little touch. So nice little touch there. Harnds tends to do that, and I've reviewed most of Harnds knives, so you can look at the playlist for that if you want to, because Harnds is kind of funky. Like, they do things a little bit differently. They don't just go after the status quo. They make their own stuff, and they do, you know, special little things. Very happy with that. We've got a bit of a crown here. It's sort of rounded, comes back. We've got a back spacer with some jimping on it, exposed jimping, so you can see that very clearly. It's sticking out. So the handle grip is pretty good, and even a reverse grip is quite comfortable. Not super comfortable because it gets a little narrow here. We've got pocket clip screws here and a cutout section, of course, so that means pocket clip goes on either side. And we've got a fairly unique pocket clip, you know, their own thing. It doesn't scoop up very much, so I did notice a couple of times I didn't quite get it onto my pocket right, and I had to go again and make sure that my pants would be pushed up against there. Well, let's just show that off right now. Let's get my surrogate pants. These used to be my pants. See, it gets close right there. It's easy to do that. It's easy just to go to put it in your pocket and do that. You've got to make sure you're sliding it on the side of your pants, and then it works quite well. You could bend that up a little bit more if you'd like to. You might scratch that surface up, so be careful what you use to grip that, to bend that up. But other than that, it's quite well. Like, over 90% of the time I didn't have a problem, but that might be enough to annoy somebody. It's not really an annoyance for me. Goes full depth easily, hides in your pocket, although you've got, you know, a shiny, glossy pocket clip. Works well. I'm happy with the pocket clip mostly. And you can put it on either side. I would have liked if they would have put a little spacer on this side, you know, like Ganzo does. But, yep, that's not a big deal. T6 screws, though, I don't like T6 screws, especially when they're button screws recessed into G10. You know, just, nope, don't prefer that. But let's take a look. Do I have, that's a T8, that's a T6. Let's see how much wiggle there is in these. There's the hole. Almost no wiggle. So the screws are made to high tolerances. They're not loose. Like, this is a high quality screw bit made by Weehaw, and yeah, they're not free and wobbly. Let's check the T8 here. Same thing. Nice and snug. Not too snug, but less chance of getting them to strip out when the screws are a good size. So although I don't like them as T6s, the T6 isn't bad. Look at that big belly on the handle there. How well does it cut? Well, it's thin at the edge and it cuts quite well. You can do that forward pinch grip. You can do this kind of grip, you know, to work on the tip, although that's a long tip for that. You can do that forward grip and the jimping comes far enough to be useful. I really like that. And then you can do this grip back here, and that brings us to some things I don't like. This is, well, I gotta leave it open to show you. This here, that circle there, where your finger goes, It's smaller. Well, my finger just barely fits in there. Now my hands, although technically they're just ever so slightly in the extra large range, I do not have fat fingers. And it gets a little uncomfortable. It's a little tight in there. And I'd prefer if that was a bigger circle. What I do like about this is that you get a very secure grip. If you're ever pushing into something, you've got a very, very secure grip right there. But that's also, I don't know if it's a con, but it's an oddity with this knife. With that, why doesn't it have a stabby blade shape? You know, like a nice spear point blade, or, you know, a nice Bowie style blade, a nice clip point, K-tip, something else than a sheep's foot. Those things don't correlate very well, in my opinion, because I'd really like this kind of grip and security in a knife that's designed for stabbing, because my hand is super unlikely to slide out and go forward. This is actually coming back. This line here is coming back, which brings us to the flipper, because the flipper is part of what's coming back to protect this area right here. This flipper is, you know, if the knife handle's straight across, that's angled forward and away, instead of most flippers, you know, they're angled this way. Not so much necessarily, but it's a little aggressive right there. It's not a problem. It's just a little more aggressive there than it needs to be. But if it was angled back a bit more, you know, then it would be coming back this way a little bit more. But that might be good to give a little bit more room in here. I think they should have made this space here a little bit bigger. You know, it's pinky finger size, maybe ring finger size, but, you know, index finger and middle finger, just, it's too tight right in there. That being said, like most liner lock knives are, your left hand fits better than your right hand, so I'm fortunate because I'm basically ambidextrous, and you might be hearing Bandit snoring in the background. I'll just let him go. I'm not going to make him be quiet. It's a really decent feeling knife that just needs to be tweaked in this area. The flipper tab and that space, and the blade shape to correlate with that. But like I said, Harnds does some odd stuff. Badging, I already mentioned the H in the pivot pin. Harnds is up here on the flat. I wouldn't mind if it was a bit smaller than that and maybe a gray instead of such a dark black. And over here, Harnds is well known for using a silly font on this side. I wish they'd keep this font. The font that they used for their name, if they'd use that same font for everything everywhere else on the knife, that'd be better, because that says Sandvik 14C28N. I know 14C28N is not branded Sandvik anymore, but this knife was probably made before that change. And Parrot looks okay with that font, but the Sandvik 14C28N doesn't look. It's like when people use the old Gothic script on tattoos and it's all uppercase letters. You can barely read what they've got on their bodies sometimes. Yeah, I'm not too fond of that. Wish they'd used a different font, but it's nice and small and it's in a place that's appropriate, not on the main bevel of the knife. It's really important to me. Well, not really important. It takes away from the overall look of the knife. What else is about this knife? What did you notice? There's no lanyard hole. So if you want a lanyard, there's no hole for that. So let's take this thing apart and we'll see about this thing and see what we think about it. Let's see if I can do this with just my hand. Nope. So we'll put this in a driver and we will take this thing apart. Okay, yep, not a big deal. It's coming out well. Assuming it'll be the back one here and not the front one that I need to take off, but we'll see. Good looking screws, nice and clean. There's no thread locker on there. Take this guy out, find the hole. There you go. I was looking at my screen instead of watching what I was doing with the driver. There we go. So there's that pivot collar. Oh, it might be titanium. Do I have a magnet here? I think I got a magnet nearby. Where do I have that magnet? And nope, it's steel. it's probably steel because it's magnetic, and aluminum and titanium would not be magnetic, and that's definitely magnetic. Steel pivot collar, let's see, take that off. Got some skeletonizing in there. We've got those ceramic ball bearings here in a phosphor bronze cage. What do we got? 4, 8, 9 ball bearings in there. Nicely done. And there's the back spacer. Let's see if that back spacer comes out. Oh, a little bit oily in there. You can get a rag and just sort of wipe off the excess oil. And I was hoping to see if these were, the kind of back spacer pins that have the recessed shoulder to go without the back spacer, but no, it's not that kind of back spacer. So you need the back spacer. If you take it out, it's not going to go together properly. You're going to be putting a lot of pressure on the G10 and not on the steel frame on the liners. So probably not a good idea to go without the back spacer. Like I see no lanyard hole, but nice skeletonizing here. Decent thickness of the liners, maybe a little thicker than it needs to be. This is a heavy knife, and we'll go across that in a minute. And there's the lock bar. Nice detent ball in there. Decent, reasonable construction. Let's put it back together. Before I go over the measurements, there's a couple things I missed. Blade alignment, quite good. Quite good indeed. Quite happy with that. Another thing is the balance point. It's right over where your index finger goes, which is what I prefer. So that's done quite well. And what was the other thing? Detent. I didn't really talk about the detent. The detent's quite good. Let's put that in there. Holds it in well. You know, it releases well when you use the flipper. So, yep, quite happy with that. Decent knife indeed. So let's go over the measurements. Try to do it quickly. The weight of this knife, 132 grams, 4.65 ounces. Yeah, she's a little bit big of a penguin. Cutting edge sharpness from the factory. Mine, 115 bests on my tester, the way I use my tester, which is better than average for a knife in this price range. That's quite good. Cutting edge length, so between my thumbnails right there, 85.2 millimeters, 3.35 inches. Blade length, tip to the closest spot on the G10 on the handle there, 90.9 millimeters, 3.58 inches. Thickness of the blade, 3.15 millimeters, a thousandth under an eighth of an inch. So 0.124 of an inch. The blade depth, the widest point, so right there at the heel of the blade and where my finger is, that's a straight line across perpendicular to the edge, is the widest point, 80 millimeters, 1.1 inches. The thickness of the edge behind the grind, so off the main bevel where it changes to the sharpening bevel right there, 0.46 millimeters, 18 thousandths. And it's the same number all the way along the blade, so I like that. That's very, very well done. The handle length this way, including the little bit of extra from the jimping sticking out there, 123.3 millimeters, 4.85 inches. Yeah, big handle. The grip area, so between my thumbs right there, the main grip area, it's just under 10 centimeters. It's rounded here, so how do you measure it exactly? But just under 10 centimeters, around 3.9 inches, so almost 4 inches of grip there. And then you get another inch up here. You got another 2.5, almost 3 centimeters extra grip area up here. And very generous grip, very little risk. I didn't talk about it in detail enough before. This huge area here means you're at very low risk of cutting your finger when you go put your finger in there. So many knives with a forward choil, you got to be careful when you put your finger in there because you might cut your finger on the edge, on the heel of the blade. This guy's just awesome for that. The thickness of the handle along its thickest section, which is right about here where my fingers are, gets a little bit thinner as you get to the end. Widest right here where your index finger goes, of course. 16.75 millimeters, 0.659, almost 0.66 inches thick right here. A lot of people are going to find that too big. This is a big knife. Just a couple more details before I talk more about that. The handle depth within the grip area is biggest right here. 27.5 millimeters, 1.08 inches. When the knife is closed, the widest point is right about here. 32.4 millimeters, 1.27 inches. And the total length of the knife when the blade is deployed is about 214 millimeters, 8.42 inches. So that's what I like and don't like about this knife. It's a big knife with a tiny little finger spot. Your index finger just, it needs more space there. And you can't just make it have more space, or else you're going to affect how well this lock release works. You could give it a little bit more space, but not an awful lot. Is it a big deal? Well, it depends on your hand size, and it depends on what you want. I really like the fact that like the design concept, I'm generally quite happy with it, although I wish it had, I would really like this to have a nice K-tip, which means this edge would have a clip point coming back like that, and with a chamfer on it, that would make it quite punctury. That's something I could modify at home if I wanted to. A lot of guys could modify that. It is hardened steel, 14C28Ns, usually between around 59 Rockwell hardness. Sometimes a little harder, sometimes a tiny bit softer, but so you need the proper equipment to do that without removing the temper from the blade by overheating it and stuff. But that might be really, really nice. If it had a straight clip back, maybe, the spine starts here. Maybe if it came back 3/8 of an inch, just about, maybe not quite a centimeter, about a centimeter, and then a straight line with a chamfer on both sides. That would make it very stabby without changing the overall length of the knife or anything. Yeah, that'd be nice. Quite nice indeed. Price on this thing, most stores you're going to see it for $54.99 US. There's no store in Canada that has this. Amazon's got it $54.99, Amazon.com. I'll have a referral link down below for that. But, White Mountain Knives. If you're in the United States, go to White Mountain Knives because you can save 10% with coupon code CCE. And your $54.99 is going to become $49.49. So $49.50 is just under $50 US for this. Not bad. Those of you who are international, AliExpress has this. If you want to shop there, $53 US. So it's not too bad. It's like $3 more, $3.50 more than it is at White Mountain Knives. So if you're in the States, like I said, go to White Mountain Knives. But the rest of you go to other places. This knife does ship to Canada from AliExpress. You're playing your odds, your chances if it's going to get past CBSA, the Border Services Agency, if they'll allow it in or not. They probably won't if they inspect it, but they don't inspect every package because they just can't. It's just the way it is. So there's that. A little bit heavy, a little bit thick. It's a nice heavy duty, well, not heavy duty, it's a fairly high duty blade design and shape and steel and grind and bevel. Yeah, it's a decent knife with a few little quirks. What do you think of it? Do you have one? Let me know in the comments below how much you like it or dislike it, and get back to me on that. So I really appreciate it when you leave a comment. That really does help the channel out. Hit that like button, hit that dislike button. If you interact below the video in any way, that really does help out the channel. It takes 30 seconds of your time and you're doing me a solid. So I appreciate you guys for doing that. And remember, friends, always cut towards your chum, not your thumb.